Ahoy hoy, I'm Planarwalk, and one of the things about arguing with a flat earther is you don't really need to, because the argument defeats itself most of the time. Of course, they'll never realise that, so you kinda got to explain it to them. So let's go through some of the flat earth arguments that defeat themselves. So one of the things that flat earthers like to claim is that there are no genuine photos from space of the globe Earth. The problem is though, even if there weren't any genuine photos of the globe Earth from space, there's no photos of a flat earth either. All flat earthers are trying to do here is just dismiss evidence. Although that's nothing new when it comes to science deniers. Another thing that defeats itself is the whole argument of, have you tested it for yourself? This defeats itself for two reasons. The first reason being, in everyday life, I do not know how everything I use works, nor do I need to know how things work. If I buy a new phone, I don't need to test that it's going to be better than my old phone before I buy it, because I'm given specs that it will be better. I also don't completely understand how sound waves work, but I know that they exist, because you're listening to them right now. And to say something like, oh, you haven't observed it for yourself, then you can't say that it's true, is completely idiotic. For example, I know that there's information on the CD. I also know that the information on the CD can be read with a laser. But I haven't tested this for myself. Now someone might say, ah yes, but you've stuck it in a DVD player or a PlayStation or something and it's read it fine. So therefore it must be being read with a laser and it must have information on it. Because the truth is, I haven't tested to see if there's a laser on my PlayStation. Sony says that there's a laser in my PlayStation. I have no reason to believe that they're wrong about a laser being in my PlayStation. I haven't opened it up because if I open it up to test if there's a laser in my PlayStation, I void the warranty. And someone could say, oh yes, but how else would they read it? And the typical flerf answer would be magnetism, because everything that has to do with a flat disc has to do with magnets, obviously. But if I were to assume that it's magnets, and then try and build my own CD or DVD player, I'd have a huge problem. It wouldn't work. And the reason for this is because information stored on a CD isn't read using magnets. And another way this argument defeats itself is, imagine if you had to do every single experiment yourself. If scientists just spent their time repeating all the experiments that other people had done, nothing new would be discovered. This is evidenced by the fact that flat earthers haven't discovered anything about the universe, let alone anything new about the universe. In fact, there's things that they think that they've discovered that defeat themselves. Fight the flat earth, how about you explain?
Cheers Planarwalk, thanks for having me on. So this whole density, buoyancy as a replacement for gravity thing, there's so many holes in it that it just defeats itself. For a start, density isn't a force. There is no vector in density. Density is literally just mass per unit volume, i.e. how much stuff there is in a given volume. And so they say that things fall because they are more dense than the air around them. And this presents two problems. First off, things aren't just falling, they're accelerating at 9.8 meters per second squared. And acceleration requires a force. And unless you're as stupid as Sleeping Warrior, no one thinks density is a force. The second problem this gives us is this. If things are falling because they are going through something less dense, or as Flat Earth Jesus puts it, going through the path of least resistance, then the fact that our atmosphere has a pressure gradient is a big problem, as this means the air above something is less dense than the air underneath something. Therefore, to follow the path of least resistance, things should go up when we let them go and not down. And let's not forget the little g in the buoyancy formula that stands for gravitational acceleration. Oh, and if it was all density, then flat earthers would just sink to the core of the earth. Back to you, bud.
Another flat earth argument that just defeats itself is the claim that you can't have a gas pressure next to the vacuum of space without a solid container separating the two. You see, the problem there is that in reality there's this thing called a pressure gradient. And if you were to keep following the pressure gradient up, you'd get to something close to a vacuum. And one thing to note is that space is not a perfect vacuum. There is nowhere in the universe that is a perfect vacuum. And there's also a flat earth claim that just defeats itself because it seems to be so disingenuous. And it's the claim that flights from the southern hemisphere to another place in the southern hemisphere always have to detour through the northern hemisphere. Whereas in reality, there are actually flights from Australia to South Africa. Of course, people like Mark Sargent say that these flights are just for show, and that don't actually exist. But you could just book it yourself. Especially if you're Mark Sargent, you have a lot of money. You could probably just book a ticket from Australia to South Africa. Easily. Alright, fight the flat earth, back to you.
Oh, you want me to do more? Fine. Right, let's look at the idiots that say magnetism replaces gravity and how easily this argument defeats itself. Just watch this video.
First, we weigh a small lead pyramid to measure the force of attraction between it and the Earth. Its weight is 152.166 grams. Now we move the heavy lead ball under the scale, adding its mass to the mass of the Earth. The weight has increased by 1/1000th of a gram, which represents the attraction between the pyramid and the ball. When the mass under the pyramid got bigger, the force of attraction did too.
See, the wonderful thing about this is to claim that the gravitational acceleration we feel is because of magnetism is a problem, as lead is diamagnetic and would actually repel the hanging weight. So magnetism, being gravity, easily defeats itself. Now again, back to you.
Another argument that just easily defeats itself is the argument that boats don't disappear bottom first over the horizon. But of course, there is a globe hero that has given evidence against this claim. That clip you just watched was a clip from Ranty Flat Earth showing a boat going over the horizon, bottom first. The next Flat Earth argument that defeats itself is the one that says that people like you and me cannot go to Antarctica. They claim that the Antarctic Treaty forbids this! Despite the fact that you can travel as a tourist to Antarctica, so yeah, there's that. But some people are persuaded by the argument of the Antarctic Treaty. But the thing is that a lot of flat earthers actually admit parts of the Antarctic Treaty. When a flat earther says something like you're not allowed to use a vehicle to traverse Antarctica, they often omit the part where it says if it disturbs the wildlife there. And it's understandable as to why they don't want the wildlife affected there, because Antarctica is pretty much like one huge nature reserve. In fact, due to the lack of human impact in Antarctica, it's very useful for scientific experiments and studies. Of course, another flat earth argument that defeats itself is the one that goes, we don't need a model, you have to prove your model. Or the one that says, you can't model the stars and stuff like that. Because, you see, flat earthers have no working flat earth model. At best, they've got a few statements that they throw out and a few observations that they make which they think disproves the globe model, but it doesn't because it's actually what we expect to see on the globe model. And even if there were an observation that disproved part of the globe model, they would have nothing to replace it with. But hey, maybe there might be a flat earth model out there. And maybe it defeats itself. Hey, fight the flat earth.
What? What now?
How about you bring up a flat earth model that defeats itself or something?
I've done 2 already. Just go to the remedial classroom. Okay, class, settle down. Today we're answering a request for information from someone called Planarwalk, something. Anyway, okay. Anyway, he wants us to give him a flat earth model that defeats itself. Any suggestions, class? Sorry, Mr. Thatcher says what now? Mr. Thatcher, is that true? You think the moon was dug out of the Grand Canyon by giants and put in the sky to mock us? And how big would this moon be? Okay, 80 kilometers in diameter. And what do you think they did? They melted the ore into quartz and filled it with helium from massive helium generators whilst it was still cooling, and put it in the sky to mock us for worshipping the sun. Okay, Flat Earth Aussie Jesus, remind me to book you an appointment with the school counsellor. Okay, first let's figure out the surface area of this giant's moon. 4 pi r squared, which equals to 20,106.19 kilometers squared. Then let's look at how much quartz would weigh for a surface area that size. For 2 centimeters thick, it weighs 196,624,296.6 kilograms. And the buoyant force of 1 meter cubed of helium at sea level is 11.8 newtons. Therefore, the amount of mass that can be lifted is 1.114 kilograms per meter squared. So there is no way this giant's moon would be possible. Now, Mr. Thatcher, does that explain why the moon could not be what you say? What? How does tennis being CGI relate to this? And what do you mean tennis is CGI? Right, fuck this, I quit.
Now, of course, there are far many more flat earth arguments that defeat themselves aside from the 10 that we've presented here. But it is midnight where I am, so I don't have time to go through a whole lot more flat earth arguments. But if you want me to make a second video, how about you leave a like and subscribe and leave a comment of a flat earth argument that defeats itself, and explain how that flat earth argument actually defeats itself. I may steal some of those arguments for a second video. Also, a big thank you to Fight the Flat Earth, who appeared in this video. I actually appear in a video on his channel, so why not go check it out? I'll put the link in the description or in a card up here or something like that. As always, a big shout out to my $20 or more patrons, Agnostic, Aussie, and what, Jesus? If you want to support me financially, you can do so on Patreon. You get some cool rewards, link will be in the description. But anyway, I will see you in the next video. Between you and me, happy Easter. And here I am, completely undefeated. Karen, you defeated yourself the last time you talked to the manager. You said that the combo was supposed to have chicken nuggets, but when you look on the menu, that combo was not supposed to have chicken nuggets.